welcome to another episode of the CPG Guys podcast. Our hosts, Sri Rajgopalan, Peter V.S. Bond, and Brian Gildenberg explore how brands and retailers engage consumers in an increasingly digitally driven world. And now, here are the CPG Guys.
Hello, folks. This is, of course, Sri, your co-host of the CPG Guys. This episode was recorded live at the Cannes Lion International Festival of Creativity. We are live in Cannes, France. My co-host today is actually fourth appearance, well on his way to winning the prize CPG Guys Letterman jacket with his fourth appearance.
One of my
Mr. Ajay Sharma, how you doing, man?
I'm good. Thanks for having me so many times. Gets me that one step closer to having that jacket.
I know you're here with Bayer. You have a busy week. Yeah. You've already had 2.5 busy days. You got some more busy days ahead of you. Thanks for making time and joining me to actually be the co-host and the CPG Guys. Sincerely appreciate it. But I want to welcome to the show a very special guest, somebody who waited quite a bit to kind of get on the show. Finally, I could actually have her on the show because I'm a free agent. And I'm thrilled to have none other than Nicole Vinson, VP at Kellanova, on the show. How you doing? Thank you again for making time. I know this is a crazy busy week. You got a lot of stuff going on as a brand representative. Thank you for making time, coming over to the press center and doing this live with us.
Yeah, no, thank you both for having me today. It's really, really great to be here. And I'm really enjoying the show so far.
Awesome. That's great to hear. So for our audience, Nicole, can you take a minute and just tell them what your role as a VP of Digital Enablement and for Global is at Kellanova, what that actually means?
Yeah, absolutely. So Kellanova, for most folks, may be a new brand that you're learning about. Kellanova is the spin-off organization from the Kellogg Company, and we are on a mission to be the world's best snacks-led powerhouse. You might find brands like Pringles and Cheez-It and Pop-Tarts in your pantry at home. But in this role, I lead our global marketing center of excellence. And within that role, I'm responsible for driving our digital transformation, really unleashing marketing as a growth driver, harnessing the power of AI and advanced analytics to drive our business day to day, and then building all of the enabling capabilities for our marketers. So everything from digital to measurement to media, creative and content, insights, all of those parts and pieces that are really allowing us to get to the advanced analytics, journey orchestration, and audiences that we can drive more personalization. Finally.
She used the two big words, man. She said AI. She said personalization. That's going to come back, Nicole. I'm going to dive into those two topics.
Absolutely.
There's so much to unpick there in that introduction. Look forward to the conversation. Yeah.
So, Nicole, let's start with your career, right? You have a solid career with eCommerce experience. You've touched Xbox, CRM systems, like fun stuff. Take us through the years. You left college. How did you get to Kellanova and the leadership role you're in today? And then if you went back in time, what advice would you give an entry-level Nicole coming out of college?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a Silicon Valley native. I grew up in the Bay Area during kind of the dot-com rise. And I always knew really early on that I wanted to go into digital marketing. I felt like it was the future and there was kind of a no regrets move. And so I think I've been really fortunate along my career to just happen to kind of be a little bit in the right place at the right time as we continue on all these S-curves in the digital space. So I started early in my career with an organization called Digital Impact. They were an email marketing company in the Bay. And they were actually acquired by Acxiom a couple years later. So in the early 2000s, I was doing really sophisticated things for the time. We were doing email audience segmentation, dynamic content and personalization. And it was all connected back to an e-commerce business. So at the end of the day, we were really driving people kind of down that funnel, kind of doing that journey orchestration and fueling the business, which was super fun to learn kind of at a very young point in my career, a lot of those really critical skills that are now translating into the world we're now in. Yeah. That role then took me to AKQA out of San Francisco, where I got to work with some really phenomenal creatives like PJ Pereira, Andrew Odell, David Lee, And within that role, I was working on the Xbox and games for Windows business. And this was kind of at the time where you had your traditional agency and you had your digital agency. And we were just making up, how to use this technology in really cool and interesting ways. And I got to work on launches like Halo 3, a lot of Forza games. And, it was a really, really fun time. Then I met my husband. He was working at Electronic Arts, actually. And we had this gaming thing in common, which was great. And in that role, he was from Colorado. So we decided that California was great, but it was expensive. And we needed to move somewhere else. So he was from Colorado. So we moved. I'm currently living in the Denver area. Got 2 great kids. But, when I moved to Colorado, I actually joined a shopper marketing agency. And I was hired at that point to run digital promotions for companies like Coors. And I was doing, silver shootout and silver ticket promotions for the Super Bowl and, basketball and all these really great things. And at that point in time, it was, you were kind of like just figuring out what digital meant. And Procter & Gamble was a really big client of ours. And the Pampers team came to us and said, we want to launch Pampers online at Amazon. And this was probably like 2009-ish. And we were like, game on, let's do this. And it was really interesting because we had the opportunity to really take in-store shopper-based design principles and then start to apply them to the online environment. And, comping up things like storefronts and what is the equivalent of an end cap in a digital environment, and how do you break up that long search results page to drive awareness and breakthrough of your brand. So it was a really exciting time, and we got to, work with them closely on launching, paid search within Amazon. And I remember this really great story, which was Pampers was ready to kind of start playing around with paid search. And P&G, you had to pay for it with a credit card. P&G was
I do remember those days.
Yeah, it was crazy, right? Because it was like a lot of the third-party sellers and a lot of that stuff in electronics and books. And so I had to go to my CFO and I said, I need you to open me a credit card.
You're going to do a $30,000 purchase on Amex.
And I don't even think we could spend $30,000 at that point because Center Store was new. Like P&G and Amazon partnered early because they were building it together. And so it was like this beautiful strategic partnership, and you weren't worried about profitability back then. And it was just like, list all your SKUs. We just want it. We're going to like figure this out. And it was great. And so, yeah, my CFO was like, you want me to do what? And she opened me a credit card for like X amount of dollars for every quarter. And I would use that and just like burn it down every day.
I remember those days,
But yeah, that was like a really great opportunity. And within the Integer Group, which was part of TBWA and Omnicom, I was building their entire Omni or eCom practice very early on for P&G, which then scaled to pretty much all of our brands within our client roster out of that office. And it was just a really great and exciting time. But I had done that now for like 10 years. And so in 2017, I decided that I needed to I'd spent so much of my career on agency that I was on the receiving end of a brief. And I needed to really understand, where does the brief come from? What are the business challenges that are really happening? How does commercial really work in a big organization? And so I jumped ship from the agency life and I went to Hanes Celestial, which is a big natural and organic manufacturer. And they have a wide variety of products across many different categories: personal care, food, with beauty space, all of that sort of stuff. And I was brought in to kind of help drive all of the digital and marketing capabilities. But we were a team that had a very small, scrappy team that was supply chain, sales, myself as marketing lead, and then our VP that kind of owned the whole P&L. And in that role, I was wearing so many different hats. It was everything from how do I build product detail pages at scale, which I was doing on the agency side, to how am I building all my media and my trade dollars, and how am I also upskilling my brand marketers so that they know that your 10-to-1 return on ad spend is great, but you're actually just acquiring, again, the people that were already buying you. So I don't know that that's actually growing your business. So it was just a really great time. And I got to really understand supply chain and price pack architecture and all of these like really critical components. And those 2 years in that role just really taught me so much. And then the opportunity, Julie Bowerman, who was just on your show, she actually hired me into that role at Hain. And she was like, I'm going to move over to Kellogg. She goes, you want to come? And I was like, yeah, let's do it. And now within my role at Kellanova, it's kind of like every bit of my career has sort of created a robust set of skill sets and experiences and capability building that has allowed me to really harness that and connect the very top of the funnel to the very bottom of the funnel now. And it's been super fun. So in this role, as I mentioned, we're really moving to full funnel marketing. And how do you actually break down the silos from sales and marketing? How are you actually building a brief that you understand the jobs to be done at every stage? Are you recruiting, reclaiming, retaining? How are you optimizing your promotional offers on the trade side so that we're all like in sync, right, with the jobs to be done? And it's been super exciting. And all the enabling tech and tools that you need to be able to get there. So
what's the advice for an entry level, Nicole?
Ooh, advice. I think the first one is to always be curious and to be a lifelong learner.
Yeah.
The world is moving so fast right now, and technology is moving so fast. And what you could do yesterday, it's going to be 10 times better in the next few days, right? Or that next S curve. And we're seeing it now with AI. So I think that's a huge one. I think two is that you're really aligning your values with the organizations that you're joining. I think it's really important that you're true to yourself at the end of the day, and that you're working with brands and peers that are all kind of part of your same sort of ethos, if you will. So I think that's really important. And then I think the last piece is just be open-minded and continue to network, because you never know what you're going to learn or who you're going to meet. And then it might come full circle for you. So sometimes it's like you end up in the right place at the right time. Other times you're going to be more intentional about where you're going next. But I think that every role that you take should be a build off of the last role. And it's building a new set of skill sets and capabilities so that you can then just be that much stronger and a more well-rounded modern marketer.
One of the things I deeply believe is anybody who's leading an e-commerce space has deep intellectual curiosity. And over the last few years, when I led General Mills in sales for North America, the number one virtue I looked for was actually curiosity. If you have curiosity, you can conquer the world. And I do actually believe, no pot shots, anybody working in the brick and mortar ecosystem has limited curiosity. I'm sorry. And the comfort zone that has been established in that brick and mortar space, they simply don't want to go evolve into a digital space. But Ajay?
Yeah, I mean, look, I fully agree. You touched upon, we're going to talk about all things capability, but I think the skill capability part, the very nature of roles has sort of blurred. If you think it's no longer just sales or marketing, within the CPG omnichannel space, you have to understand sales, marketing, tools and tech, finance, supply chain, and that becomes the new form of, CPG capability that, all employees have got to have at some point. So it's great to hear that. And as we now dig into one of those capabilities, let's talk everybody's favorite topic, which has been a hot topic most of this week, around retail media. So, over the course of your introduction, 2020 versus 2024, what's changed? How do you coach brand and sales teams on retail media?
Yeah, retail media is thrown a big, I don't call it a wrench. It is a monkey wrench into the mix, right? Because the blurring of the lines of, distribution and promotion and media and all of these things. And then you've got on-site and off-site. So if I go back to 2020, I would say that there was still a lot of testing and learning in retail media. Like you were trying to figure out, well, how much money should I actually put over here? And is it really incremental to my business? And how is it actually performing? There was so much lack of transparency. I mean, I wouldn't say lack of transparency. It's a lot better now. But
lack of transparency, it's real.
Yeah. And so I would say in 2020, it was like you were starting to shift more dollars there, but you were still having to really convince the brand and the category teams that like you needed to be shifting there. And, that was a big, hard push because they weren't really sure yet. You hadn't even started to do like media mix modeling to understand, is there like a good ROI in this? And how's that going to affect my numbers and all of these things? And so, and in 2020, when the pandemic hit, you started to realize how much more important it was that you had good, strong supply chain signals and in-store availability and stock and days on hand and all of these things, because like we couldn't even get product on the shelf fast enough during COVID. And so you realize that like, wow, we really need to connect all these data pipes, because I on the marketing side, like shouldn't be building demand if I can't even fulfill it when you get to the store, or it's being picked from the shelf. Right. And so I think that like, today, like we're getting a lot more sophisticated in how we can take all of these signals and again, starting to blur those lines, break down those barriers. And how do you ensure that the demand you're generating, you can actually like close that sale at the end of the day? I think the other piece too with retail media now is that there's so much of this offsite investment that's happening. And, and you're investing because your total spend is like sometimes part of your JVP agreements with these customers. And sometimes it's not. It kind of depends on the customer, right? But like they want more and more investment over there. And now they're giving you the keys to the kingdom to take their audience data and like apply it right in an offsite environment. But then you're like, is this really incremental? Like, are these audiences like really so different than the audiences I can be building either with my first party data or with clean room and addressable audiences with like LiveRamp and Epsilon, for example. So I think that like we're starting to get smarter about all these things to like really understand like the incrementality of it. And are we actually reaching different people like through these different channels, or are you better off continuing to like put all your offsite over here and manage it, and then you're doing all the onsite over here? So it's really muddy, and I don't think that there's a right way or a wrong way right now, but I think it's continuing to work with those retailers and not even just thinking about the media side of the data and the audiences, but like how do we think about like data and what they have more holistically and end to end on our business, so that we are taking more of that supply chain information or your audience data and getting like, even closer to where are the pockets of growth? Like where am I under indexing in certain, zip codes, or, why is this store not have like the full assortment? And how do I like really start to like use all of those levers to like plug holes?
And it's probably one of the most important points that you highlighted. It's the interconnectivity between all of those areas and the role that media plays. It's no point having great content if we're not driving traffic, and it's no point driving traffic if you've got poor content, or you're out of stock from a supply chain perspective. So I think what's really highlighted well is that interconnectivity. And sometimes, CPG sort of forget that and still operate in silos.
Mm-hmm. So one thing about retail media I did want to ask you is, 2020, it was still new to the industry. It shouldn't have been, but it was still new to the industry. Do you feel 2024 from a capability as well as an execution perspective from the RMN side, we're in a happy place, or do you think this is still evolving?
I think it's still really evolving. I think, again, like the measurement is like getting better. We're still not like completely connecting all the parts and the pieces together, but I'm hopeful, right? That like in the next few years, like the dust is never really going to settle, right? Because we're constant innovators and we're going to figure out new ways to reach and engage and convert our shoppers. But I do feel like it's getting better. I think it's getting more collaborative. I think that, with sales and marketing starting to really come together more closely, you're really starting to like solve business problems and working with that retailer so that you can mutually grow your business.
And do you feel from a metric standpoint, RMNs have evolved to provide the right metrics versus metrics? Getting there, maybe?
Yeah, I'd say we're getting there, but I think that there's still a lot of work to be done to understand, based on like funnel stage, or are you recruiting, reclaiming, retaining, like you're going to be looking at different KPIs. Mm-hmm. At the top of the funnel, you're going to be looking at something different than you are middle and bottom of the funnel. But I think where there's a lot of opportunity is to really start to understand what are those behavioral indicators that are really giving you a proxy in like more real time that this is actually going to convert, so that you can get smarter, right, about how you're like optimizing right in the moment versus like waiting for 6 or 9 or 12 months for your MMMs to come back to tell you like how you were doing, so we're getting there.
Subject for another day, MMMs and retail media, but I'd love to go into another area that you
Sure.
actually represent, which is digital content, right? There was this mad rush, maybe 2017, 18, got to chase digital content, customize it by retailer, have different variations. Some retailers would take 5 images, some would take 8, some didn't have video. Like I feel over COVID, all this is coming together. Everybody's got video, everybody's got the right amount of images or more. Do you feel as an industry, we've already evolved in that space, or does digital content, images, videos all mean, is it table stakes, or do these things even mean anything anymore?
Yeah, I mean, I think that content is incredibly important. And I think content that is fit for the platform that it's running in is like paramount, right? Because the way that you approach content on one channel or another is going to resonate with an audience a little bit differently, right? Into that like state of mind. Like, am I endlessly scrolling on my phone right now and I've got to like figure out how I'm going to like grab that attention in that like millisecond that you've got? Or am I, in an owned channel where I have like undivided attention, and I can engage a consumer in like longer form content and storytelling? Or at the digital shelf, we're still CPG. Like, so it's like, we're not like high consideration, you're not like researching the food that you're going to put in your mouth. Right. So it's, so I think that like content is really important, but I think you also have to know the role of that content in that channel and what is the outcome you're trying to drive. Right. I think that content though has become, it's kind of like the buzzword. And I think that like from a AI perspective, right? Content creation now with AI is allowing us to generate so much more content that can be so much like personalized to specific audiences. And we can do that now like at the same cost or a lower cost than we were able to produce content before, right? So I think you've got to like go back and figure out again, like, how are we thinking about content holistically? How am I building the right assets? And then what are the tools that I have so that I can like tailor that content to the right channel for the right objective for that audience?
AI and content, the intersection actually seems to put fear in people that, a lot of duplication, a lot of artificial stuff. And at the end of the day, AI isn't sharp as real content. Big question I wanted to ask is, do you believe AI is a good thing for content, or are you one of those that feels it is going to lead us to not the best path?
Well, I think are you talking about?
It's more what's the advice, not are you one of those? That wasn't the right choice.
Sorry. So I would say I'm not afraid of AI at all.
It's great to hear.
I think that, you still need human interaction to be guiding the AI. And you still have a decision at the end of the day of like what the output is. And if you're going to use it, not use it, is it good,
input
right?
Equal to output.
It's all those things. And so I think that we're still early in this and we're still figuring it out. And what are the right use cases to apply that technology to creative? And are you doing longer form storytelling, or are you just cranking out transcreation and translation and you're like piping content for the digital shelf to, now I can create pack shots in like 10 seconds versus, I had like a 6 weeks lead time to create a product detail page.
And personalize and customize.
Right. And so I think that the AI is like, I think it's going to be a productivity game changer. But I do think that there's still a big art of creativity that's going to happen within using those types of tools.
Yeah. Once again, there's an efficiency play, but not at the compromise of quality of output. And that's the fine line I think CPGs are trying to solve for.
Mm-hmm.
No, really, really great. Now moving on from creativity to the account development side. You've been in e-commerce account development since day one at Amazon. How has this evolved, and how have you handled the evolution? And again, we probably could spend a whole podcast episode just on this.
Yeah. So I would say that the relationship has evolved in probably a very positive way. Again, going back to like the breaking down of the silos. Before it was like your sales lead was kind of the interface of this, but now today, because retail media investment, data investment, all of those pieces, and like, how are we also supporting it from an in-store perspective? Like, they all have to come together. And so it's not just the salesperson interfacing with the buyer or the sales team, but it's, you now have to have your media team at the table. You have to have the brand and the category team at the table. You've got to have supply chain at the table. You might need a little R&D in there. And so it's like, you're having to, like, again, bring different types of partners to the table with you to really figure out, like, how am I going to, like, dig into the insights so that when I show up at this customer, I actually know more about my consumers than they do, especially in CPG, because we don't own that point of transaction even, right?
Yeah.
And so it's, you've got to start to, like, leverage all of these different cross-functional resources so that you can really build compelling stories about what you're going to do together and what the benefit is going to be mutually as you're talking through kind of those JBP agreements. So I think that's, like, the biggest transition that you have, because it's about planning those trade dollars and those brand building dollars, like, more holistically, and then lining up, like, the price, the promotion, and then how are you connecting the online to the offline?
To some extent, I feel when people like you and me, Ajay included, when we started up business or working with Amazon like 10 years ago, it was a sales channel. Even though it was super tiny, it was a sales channel.
Mm-hmm.
Today, I think Amazon plays a very different role, not necessarily just a sales channel, but an actual consumer communication channel through Amazon ads. Would you agree? Like, is it national media?
Again, if you're thinking about, like, all the connected TV and the streaming and, the
Sports
audio
now.
and all of these things, right? Like, you're having to look at these ecosystems so differently, because you've got to be, like, looking at your media mix, like, and you've got to be finding where your audience actually is. I think, within COVID even, like, how many of us, like, had already cut cords or did cut cords, right? And so now you're suddenly, like, in these, like, you've got Amazon, you've got Netflix, right? You've got Hulu, you've got, and suddenly you're in all these net new places where now, like, with our phones and QR codes, COVID unlocked a purpose for the QR code.
I know, as sad as it is, that's a reality.
Right. Like we had them for years, but we never found utility in them until COVID hit. And so it's like, now it's like you can literally connect a broad reach media channel to a transaction in seconds.
In a healthy way. And that's the right thing to do.
Yeah. And I think that is super exciting and fun. And as a consumer, like, you're always having a second screen experience too. And so it's like, how are you connecting all of these parts and pieces together? Because you're vying for attention. And I just think that, you're right. Like, our retailers, some of them are media channels and they're content creators. And think about, with Kellanova. Jerry Seinfeld just did an entire video or a whole movie about the Pop-Tart. Like, granted, like, we weren't even part of that whole exercise, that whole, like, script writing and the production of his film until really, like, after it was done. But, like, then we're, like, leaning in with Netflix and, what Barbie just did with Mattel was.
Barbie's definitely, this Renaissance Barbie is certainly one of the greatest marketing genius moments in history.
Right. And iconic brands are showing up in ways that they have never shown up before. Like, you can't, like, Barbie, like, that's going to be a case study for, like, years and years and years, And
that's another podcast right there in terms of how
we got to get Mattel on.
Yeah.
How do you make a brand and make it relevant? Again, connecting with a new wave of, call it, consumers.
Absolutely. So, again, I just think that this world is, like, so exciting right now.
So in that exciting ecosystem, right, the word omnichannel is thrown around quite a bit. Digital transformation is thrown around quite a bit. If you look forward, though, what does digital transformation go forward when now most, whether it's sales team, marketing teams, they all get the plot and they're trained on omnichannel? I'm not saying everything's perfect, but they're definitely trained. They get the plot. So what are you advocating in the industry for this transformation? What's happening? What happens next?
Yeah, I think right now, AI obviously is, like, the big buzzword. And it's, for a while we were all just kind of talking about it. Nobody kind of really knew what it was doing. Now you're like, it's in my face every day. And I'm using these tools, like, to, like, craft a better email or, go through my entire inbox and, like, help me curate my to-do list. So, But, when it comes to like harnessing the power of what AI can deliver as a tool for us, you have to have strong, trusted, integrated, accessible, democratized, safe data. Because you can't feed any of these AI algorithms if you don't have good data. And it's like, if there's bad data, then it's bad data in and bad data in outputs, right, that you would get from that data. So I think digital transformation right now is like, how do we finally really start to integrate all of these different data sources so that we can start developing really interesting use cases to solve real business problems. And so I think there's going to be just a significant amount of investment in data integration, data storage, how you're like building your privacy and your ethics teams and how you're like really starting to like train your marketers and your organization on how to like use these tools and apply them right back to their business. So I think that's going to be like a huge focus. And then it's going to be like requiring a lot of the upskilling and training of an entire workforce that, has never like done this stuff before. And they never really had to like think about all of this stuff because it was just tools that they were, comfortable using. So yeah, I mean, I think that's like the next piece of this is like, how do we really start to get to new use cases?
What about a fully connected, like consumer to shopper experience? Do you think we're here? There's ways to go?
I think we're here. And I think for CPG though, it's trying to decide like how you really want to connect that journey, because getting to like personalization or even one-to-one in CPG, I'm not actually sure that the juice is worth the squeeze. But if you're like really thinking about one-to-many, I think then there's skill in that, right? But you've got to still have a really strong data infrastructure, because if you can set up your audiences, you can connect the experiences, you can personalize the offers or the creative, but you also need the measurement side of all of this, right? And so, this is where like our clean rooms are coming in and our retail media data, and like, how do you actually like stitch that back together so that you can see what's happening and that we're actually driving behavior change, or we're trying to drive the business outcome that was the objective of.
So you can probably see a common thread or common topics coming through every part of the conversation that we've had. And one of those areas is AI. There was a part to play in retail media. It came through digital transformation. There was a creativity and content part. How do you tie a bow on AI? And as you start looking to the future, what are some of the things that you're working on to embed it within the organization across all of these different areas?
Yeah. So I think, again, you absolutely have to start with the business problem. What are you trying to do or do better, right? So that's number one. I think number two is like, do you have the data that you need to then go off and solve that problem?
Yeah.
And is the data organized and accessible and integrated, right, in a way that that it can be trusted? And then there's like the governance layer on top of that, right? Which is like, how are we like managing all of that data, the privacy, the security, the ethics around all of that, so that you're continuing to build that really deep consumer trust. We spend a lot of money acquiring names into your first party data set, but like, one misuse of data can be detrimental to a brand. And so, I can't like underscore how important it is that you're working really closely with your privacy team, your security team, your legal team, and in really ensuring that you have the permissions in place to be responsibly using this data, because we don't own the consumer data. The consumer owns their data today. So that's a really big one. I think it's about the right talent mix. This is a different set of skills. Data scientists, engineers, right? You need business translators that can actually like talk with the business and then be able to talk to the scientists, the engineers, the data visualizers, right?
Nicole, the one thing that worries me over there is it is a new skill set. Like if I look back the last 10 years and see did brick and mortar folks really evolve to being omnichannel, truly digital, I'd say 20%, 25% did. My hope in the industry is with AI, we don't do the same thing. Like it's actually a 90% adoption curve.
I think it has to be, right? I mean, I have young kids and like the stuff that they're doing with AI right now it blows my mind. But it's going to be upskilling a workforce, but it's also like bringing in a new blend of talent. I think that like even the idea of like your IT team sitting over here like I need all those people like so close to me so that we can like do this in a more agile way. And so I think even just the ways of working and like in like sprints and things like that is so different because like we're so used to working in like a linear, like waterfall fashion. Right. So hopefully I'm threading all this together for you.
Yeah.
And then I think the other piece around this is like, you have to get to scale. You can do like one proof of concept, but like, and you can do it quick and dirty in a sandbox or things like that. But like, when you actually need to go scale it, like, again, it goes back to the data and like the teams that are like managing that and how you can like really harness it. But then it's like, once you get to a success story or a use case that's working, and oh, by the way, it probably won't work the first time you try it. I think only like 15% of AI use cases or advanced analytics use cases actually succeed the first time. And so it's like, you have to be iterating and you have to be okay with failure because again, you're not going to nail it the first time all the time. But when you do, how are then you building that as a platform to be sharing and like shouting from the rooftops across your organization that this is a use case that can drive your business, and then getting people to start applying those at scale once you've proven it out.
How awesome. Let me remind our audience, you can find all of our content simply by going to a web browser and typing www.cpgguys.com. If you or you know someone who'd love to join the show and have a thoughtful conversation, brands, retailers, service providers, drop us an email at contact@cpgguys.com. That's again, contact@cpgguys.com. To our 33,000 plus dedicated LinkedIn followers, I can't say thank you enough times for the DMs, the likes, clicks, comments, taking our polls, appearing on the show. Without you, the show doesn't exist. So do drop us a rating on the top right navigation bar of our website. The rating tells us whether we're getting the conversations right. The review tells us whether we're having the right guest, like we just had Nicole today. Nicole, I want to say a deep thank you. This is a busy week for you, arguably here in Cannes. You're running from pillar to post. You have agency meetings. You're going to the yachts. You're going to the convention center. You're seeing
Work is
keynotes.
really hard this week.
Yeah, I mean, people think, hey, Cannes Lions is one of those where it's like a boondoggle, but we've been on our feet like 12 hours. Yesterday was a 15-hour day.
I'm wearing
so sincerely, thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was a true pleasure to be here. I love talking about all of this. And again, big fan of the show. So thanks again.
Thank you so much, Nicole. Ajay, thank you for making time. You're getting closer to getting that letter jacket. And it was a pleasure doing multiple episodes with you here at Cannes Lions Festival of Creativity.
Oh, thanks for having me. I'm really enjoying the conversation. Thanks.
That's a wrap of this episode. See you soon on another episode of the CPG Guys.
The content in this podcast episode is provided for general informational purposes only. By listening to our episode, you understand that no information contained in this episode should be construed as advice from CPG Guys LLC or the individual author, hosts, or guests, nor is it intended to be a substitute for research on any subject matter. Reference to any specific product or entity does not constitute an endorsement or recommendation by CPG Guys LLC. The views expressed by guests are their own, and their appearance on the program does not imply an endorsement of them or any entity they represent. The views expressed by CPG Guys LLC do not represent the views of their employers or the entity they represent. CPG Guys LLC expressly disclaims any and all liability or responsibility for any direct, indirect, incidental, special, consequential, or other damages arising out of any individual's use of, reference to, or inability to use this podcast or the information we present in this podcast.